Well, you don't have to be around NorthField long before you realize that over the last several years that we have been growing really above our ability to keep up. About 6 months ago, we employed a Christian employment firm to help us find NorthField's first executive pastor. They came up with about 50 candidates who applied from all around the country and right here in Gallatin, in Middle Tennessee area. That was narrowed down to some outstanding candidates, but one of those rose from the top. So I would like you to give a NorthField welcome to NorthField's first executive pastor, Mike Parker, and his wife, Julie. Hey, I am so glad. You don't know how glad I am that you are here. We've never had one of you before, and so it is going to be a wonderful journey together of learning and growing, and I'm excited where this is going. If you don't know we had somebody just when we were out not long ago, they asked, what does an executive pastor do? Well, what Mike is going to be doing primarily is helping with our pastoral staff, developing new ministries, the current ministries, and making sure we're all aligned and on the right page. And in many ways helping with the day-to-day operations of getting things moving along and just continuing this incredible journey that we've been on for the last 6 years. Mike and Julie come to us from Fort Myers, Florida. They've been married for 25 years. They have, I always clap for that. They have a son, Ethan, who is a sophomore at Middle Tennessee State University, and Julie works as a physical therapy assistant. Mike got his degree at Kentucky Christian University. He's been in full-time ministry for 28 years, and particularly in the areas of executive leadership and discipleship. It is a pleasure to have you here. I wanted you to say this morning anything that you wanted to say to our church family as you kind of embark on this new phase of your life.
Well, I just want to say thank you for making us feel so incredibly welcome from the very beginning of the process of interviewing and all that stuff. We've just felt like this feels like home, and we're super excited to be here. And as I have read and just have begun to see all the wonderful ministries that are happening, not only in this building in NorthField, but the outreach that goes out of this building, I'm just super excited. And my wife and I were just super excited to be a part of what God's doing in the life of this church, of loving God, loving people, and making Jesus known. So if you see us out in the neighborhoods or the restaurants or wherever, we would love to meet you. So don't be like, should we go or should we not? Come on up. We would love to meet you and begin to get to know the people here at NorthField. We'll be out in the green room following this service, and please stop by. We'd love to meet you. But we're just grateful to be here, and thank you for Tom for bringing us and letting us be a part of this journey.
Well, we are excited to have you, yes. Hey, I want you to mark down May 7th. That is a Sunday. Not only it is our Senior Sunday celebration that we'll be having that day, but you will be able to hear from Mike as well, and just different ways and things that he has to kind of incorporate and come alongside us and help in our mission to love God, love people, and make Jesus known. Thank you so much for being a part of that.
Thank you.
Thank you for saying yes. Well, so much happening this morning. Today we're continuing in our journey on prayer and fasting. Anybody excited that today starts 21 days of the fasting portion of that? Oh, we got some back there. Those are the people who have gone through it before and have come out the other side alive and can tell that God actually worked during those 21 days. I've heard so many of you talk about different things in different ways, from some of the oldest among us to some of the youngest. I met two teenagers, 13 and 14 years old, out in the lobby who had already made a list of things that they were going to give up over the next 21 days. And then they had on the other side of the sheet of the paper the things that they were going to pray for the next 21 days. It just kind of warmed my heart. I've talked to so many people, some ideas that I've heard people say. I heard one person say that they're going to try and fast one day each of these 3 weeks. It was new to them, and so they're picking out a day, so that would be 3 days over the period. Absolutely incredible. Heard someone else say that they're going to try to fast for one meal for each of the 21 days. Still others, particularly those who might have dietary restrictions, who have said, I may not be able to fast from a total meal, but what I'm going to do is pick out something that I really love to eat, and I'm going to put it aside. And then even more that have said, what I'm going to do is maybe it's a technology fast, maybe it is social media. It's something that maybe I spend too much time with. But if you remember, it's not just giving up something. It's giving up something and then replacing it with something that's better, and using that time that you would be, whatever it is, whether it's a hobby or technology or whether it's a meal, using that time to cry out to our Father in heaven. I hope that each one of us will participate, because it's the power of this, the togetherness. And as we told you last week, this series is a spinoff of the Sermon on the Mount, Upside Down Kingdom, that we've been doing. It's where Jesus in Matthew chapter 6 comes along and says, when you give, and we're all familiar with giving, so we thought, well, I know what he's talking about there. Then he says, and when you pray, and we think, well, we're all familiar with praying, so we know what he's talking about there. But then he says, when we fast, well, what I learned is that most of us have heard about fasting, but not a lot of us have made it a practice that we put into our life on any consistent type of basis. So many good comments. If you didn't get one of these booklets, I encourage you to pick one up. They're at the Amen station as you exit the auditorium today. It's on the left-hand side. If you're in a small group, you went over this last week. The small group that I'm a part of had a wonderful discussion leading from this. The videos that Ryan and Dan have put together, outstanding, and I think can help lead you. If you don't have a small group, I encourage you to grab one of these and do it on your own, or with if you're married, a husband, wife. If you're not, maybe with a friend. Just a great study together to kind of lead us all to the same place. Well, today is going to look a bit different than other Sundays, because today we're going to talk to really three people. A lady first, and Lisa Jacoby, and then we're going to follow that up with Steve and Ashley Luther. So first, I want to invite Lisa Jacoby to the stage with me. Y'all give her a good NorthField welcome. Well, Lisa, thank you for saying yes. Many people here already know you. You teach, and we call it NorthField University. If you're old school like me, we just called it Sunday school. But NorthField U, we teach in there, and people are going to see why you're such an effective teacher in just a minute. But when you guys came and said, could we do a study on prayer and fasting, especially as it stems from the Sermon on the Mount, one of the things that you wanted to do was open up this building for a period where people could come in and pray. And then you just kind of listed for us several different reasons why you thought that was important. So I ask you this morning, just for a few minutes, to share with our church family, why come in here to the building to pray? It may be a very important part of what we're going to do for the next 21 days.
Well, there are basically three reasons I thought providing a space here at NorthField would be powerful, both either for individuals or collectively as a body in Christ. The first reason is that this space is a consecrated space to the Lord. This is why we call it the house of the Lord. It's His. We set it aside, and we designate it as a holy place for Him. And He tells us in Isaiah 56, He says, "For my house will be a house of prayer for all the peoples." So it's not just a space where we come to worship, it's also a space where we come to pray and encounter Him, to seek Him. The second reason is that we've sort of set it up so that there will be people here to pray with you if you desire that, or if you want to come as a group, you can do that. There's power in numbers when you pray. He tells us in 2 Chronicles chapter 7, verse 14, he says, "If my people who are called by my name humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven, I will forgive their sin, and I will heal their land." We have this amazing scene that is given to us in Revelation chapter 5 of the throne room of God, where there's 24 elders that are standing around the throne, and they are each holding a golden bowl of incense that's constantly the smoke from this incense is rising before the throne. And it tells us in Revelation chapter 5 that incense is the prayers of the saints. So the more people you have praying over something, the more incense is going before the throne of God. And so that our prayers are continually before him, and he is always on his throne. So there's power in numbers when you pray on something. Sometimes, too, it's helpful to have someone pray with you. Sometimes we just maybe don't know how to pray in a situation. So it's just really helpful to have someone come alongside you and pray with you. And I know in my own experience that when you're praying together, it builds that unity in Christ in the body. There's also power as an individual in private as well. We're told in James chapter 5 that the effective prayer of a righteous man can accomplish much. So while you don't have to be in a group or with multiple people, there's still power to pray individually, but to have a space that is designated for that leads to the third reason: fewer distractions. Wherever your place may be that you go to, your prayer closet, there can still sometimes be distractions in a place like that. The dog's barking, the doorbell's ringing, the baby's at the door saying, "Mommy, where are you?" So it just gets you, it brings you to a place where you're going to be, have fewer distractions in trying to listen for the Lord. But either way, I want to stress that whether we come together as a body or we pray privately, it doesn't matter. There's power in both of those. But God does promise that when we fast with a humble, surrendered heart, that He will, and we cry out to Him, He will hear us. He promises He will answer. Isaiah tells us in Isaiah chapter 58, which is the chapter in the Bible on fasting God's way. Isaiah tells us that when we are humbled, when we are surrendered and fasting before the Lord, He says, "You will cry, and He will say, 'Here I am.'"
Well, that's kind of the whole point of the 21 days is each of us to be able to hear from God, maybe in a way that we haven't heard before. Our prayer team put together one of these prayer calendars. Hopefully you were handed one as you came in the service today. If not, they are at each of the doors and at the Welcome Center on the way out. At the bottom, it lists some times that we've opened the building, really for the next 3 Tuesdays during the day, each of those from 11 to 1. And I know you and some members of our prayer team are going to be here starting this Tuesday, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. You'll be here to pray with people. And then in the evenings from 6 o'clock until 8 o'clock for the next 2 Tuesdays, we'll be here. I know the group that I'm a part of is going to be a part of this Tuesday, just being here to pray with anyone who wants to, and even to pray individually by ourselves. We may even take different parts of the building and just pray over what's happening in those. So, hey, I want to thank you for all the work that you have done, for teaching at NorthField University, and for just being available today. Thank you. While Lisa is going down, Steve and Ashley Luther are going to be making their way up as well. Thank you, too, both of you, for being here for all 3 services and just telling your story. You have a powerful, powerful story. We're going to set it up for you, and then we're going to dive in. Summary is that you guys have 3 children: Jacob, who's in college; Tyler, who is 17, and Ken, who is 14. And together your family went through an experience that a lot of families went through during the era where COVID was very rampant, and where a lot of people weren't surviving that. And as you're going to hear, Steve did survive. You're here with us today, and we are so thankful for that. But just really the first two services have been an acknowledgement. I know that you have spoken to some people already who their story didn't turn out the way that yours did. And we want to let anyone know if this brings up memories, if it brings up people in your life that didn't survive this disease, please come talk to us. Whether it's through that digital connection card, talking to Steve and Ashley, one of the pastors here, we want to be here for you, and we want to be cognizant of the fact that not everyone's story turned out like this. But we also don't want to neglect turning back and praising God even for the one that when he speaks and he works in their lives. So to sum everything up, and you spent 129 days in the hospital, Steve, September 1st, 2021 to January the 7th of 2022. What started as a simple positive COVID test from your 14-year-old son, I guess then 11, 12 years old. Then just a random test that he had done ended up positive. He comes home. Your whole family ends up contracting COVID. Everyone got well with very few symptoms except for Steve. We're going to dive in after the positive test. You guys are getting better, but Steve is not getting better. And Ashley, one day you walk in, and this is the picture that you have in front of you. Steve, what was happening in your body? What were you feeling in that moment?
It was flu-like symptoms, just a lot of aching, pain. I couldn't get comfortable in any position. I couldn't get comfortable laying down, sitting. It was miserable, and I started having difficulty breathing.
So when you come in and find him, I know one of the things you said to me, you said, we can't handle this. This is beyond our ability right now. Walk me through what the next couple of days look like.
So when I saw Steve in that position, I knew that it was more than just the flu. He was young, healthy, no existing conditions, bounces back very quickly from things. And so I took this picture and sent it out to our family and our friends, and I said, we need to be in prayer for Steve. And that led us to visiting our PCP when things weren't getting better, and he just said, go straight to the emergency room. You've got pneumonia in your lungs, and get there as quickly as possible. Do not stop. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Go straight there. So we went there, and they didn't have any beds for him at the time. It was the height of the Delta variant. And so they sent us home with home oxygen and gave us some numbers to monitor, namely his blood oxygen level, and of course the amount of oxygen that we had him on.
So you've got a machine that's giving him oxygen, but what you noticed over the next 2 days is that your oxygen level continued to go down in your body as you were turning up the machine.
That's
and finally
right.
you got to a point where the machine was 100% oxygen, but your numbers continued to decline. That was 2 days later. Tell me what you did then.
So I was not sleeping, monitoring his blood oxygen level, and it was about 3 o'clock in the morning, I think, on September 1st, and I had turned the oxygen concentrator all the way up. There was no more room to go upwards, and his oxygen numbers were below 88, and they just kept dropping and dropping. So I loaded him up in the car, and we went back to Sumner Station, and it started a whole new chapter we weren't prepared for.
Now, I know one of the most dramatic moments that, I have trouble even envisioning you. I think we saw it on TV, we saw what was happening, but you lived it. You pulled up in the parking lot. They wouldn't even let you go in. They came out to the car.
That's right.
Looked at what was happening, and then...
They just told me, stay where you're at. And I said, I want to give him a hug. Can I come in just for a minute? They said, no, you just stay right where you're at. And they took him. And that was the last time I saw him for a long time.
So they take him while you're in the parking lot, and I can't imagine what that moment's like. Do I turn? Do I leave? What do I do? But over the next few days, you guys began to do some things. Tell me what the next 2 days look like.
Well, Steve was progressively getting worse. They admitted him into the they transferred him to the ICU, and so we just spent a lot of time in prayer and together as a family, and we actually ended up making some signs. One of the days, Steve was actually on a rebound, it felt like, on September 4th, and the nurse called and said, "Hey, Steve's sitting up in the window, and y'all come by and he can wave to you." So the family got to work making some signs to hold up from the parking garage.
We've got a picture of those in a minute we're going to show, but so that was the 4th. The 4th seemed like a good day, kind of filled
right.
you with hope.
Yes.
But then the 5th was part of this roller coaster ride that happened. Tell us what happened on the 5th.
Steve called. He FaceTimed me, and both of his lungs had collapsed. And he said, "Babe, they're putting me on the vent." And I was in such shock. I said, "What? No, you were just fine yesterday. You were sitting up at the chair. You even actually came off the pressure mask, and you were just on a nasal cannula. I thought we were getting better." And the nurse said, "His lungs need to rest." And I said, "Well, I'm coming up there to see my husband." And she said, "Oh, Mrs. Luther, you can't come. Our policy, blah, blah, blah." And I said, "I know what your policy is, and I'm coming in the door. So when I get there, you better let me in." So I went, and
They tell you the vent is not something you want to go on. Once you get to that point, it's a 15 to 20% chance of survival. So she was, I knew, going to be very upset, and I was trying to be strong and, let her know that everything was going to be okay.
that's right.
So you made it past the room. You said, "I'm going in," and tell me the moment you got far enough away. You knew they're behind you, but you just bolted.
Security took me up from ER, and I had never been in the hospital before, but I knew just where his room was because I had spent so much time in the parking garage, looking right into his window, of course. And so as soon as I got through that ICU door, I just took off running down. I was dropping my purse, my sweatshirt, everything, and I walked in the room, and I was so scared. And I just said, "Babe, what are we gonna do?" He said, "Everything's gonna be okay." And I said, "Well, how do you know that?" And he said, "I promise you I'm coming home." And right then, everything started going crazy. Machines were beeping. I didn't know what they meant. And they said, "It's time for you to go. We have to do it right now." And so they escorted me out, and I went to the parking garage, and it was nighttime, so the lights were on in the room, the shade was open, and it was dark outside, so I could see the whole thing. I saw them intubate him. I saw them put in his chest tubes. I saw it all.
Steve, you said one of the last things that you cognitively remember, not only that meeting with Ashley that was short, but you had playing the song by CeCe Winans to come out, "Believe For It," and you had them put that on loop, and it was playing continuously. What was it about that song that was giving you hope?
Just the entire time I was trying to stay positive and stay in a state of gratitude, and just so thankful for everything I've been given in life. And our business partner sent the video. She had just released it, and it just really spoke to me about, all things are possible. You walk in faith and you believe for it. And I cranked it up and had it on loop and drove everybody in the hospital going crazy with it, I'm sure, but
Well,
that's
there were
what I
probably a
needed.
lot more people there that needed to believe for something, and it's hard to imagine that. You said that, memories before the event went in, vivid. After that, they're off and on and a bit foggy in there. Ashley, you said over the next 4 days that while you had a prayer life before, your prayer life took on a whole different turn. There were 3 places that you prayed. One was on your back porch. Your mother had come down and was watching the boys. Another place you prayed was the hospital. And we've got in the parking garage that was right across from where Steve's room is. And we've got a picture up there right now of you and your boys. What was there that, like, just the motion of your hands there? What was happening?
I just wanted to be as close to him as possible, so I'd spend a lot of time there, and I'd just reach out. And I'd say, I'm sending you all my strength. Feel my love. Feel my love. And it was as close as I could get, but I wanted to be there as much as I could.
Almost like being abandoned, almost kind of you're apart, you're close, but you're so far apart. I know one of the things you said brought your boys hope that you love to do. We've got a picture of the signs that you were talking about, how they would hold them up there. And we've even got a larger group that we're going to talk about in a minute where quite a few of us showed up there in the hospital garage. And there you are in the picture on my right here, holding up your hand as we're praying. The third place that you said you prayed, which kind of brings us full circle back to here, is you came here. Yes. I remember one of the mornings you walked in and you said, I just want to know if there's a place in the building I can pray. And you wanted to specifically pray in this room. We had a lower stage at that time, and I think we even have a picture there, yes, up there. You brought a picture, your wedding picture. Sometimes it would be pictures of Steve with your boys, but just different pictures that you would bring. And I know from a staff standpoint, we tried to leave you alone, but there were times we would go by and it would be quiet, and there would be times we would go by where you could hear your heart just crying out for healing and for protection. And almost like Paul says in the book of Romans, where he says, it's a groaning that we can't even really put into words. What was special about coming here for you?
I mean, this church, from the moment we came, felt like home, and it's been so good to our family, and we connected from the moment we walked in these doors with everyone here. And being here just gave me so much peace. And I couldn't be close to him, and I wanted to be close to God. And when you're in this situation, what else do you do other than pray and call out? And so being here gave me so much peace, so much comfort, and just became a place that I wanted to be all the time.
So prayer, it really exploded.
Big time.
In your life. I know that September 9th, then just a few days after this period, September 9th was a big day. You get a call early that morning. Walk us through September 9th.
It's the call no one wants to get. And I was asleep, and it jolts you awake. And they said, you better come. You better come fast. And I think I ran every traffic light from my house to Sumner Regional Medical Center. But I got there, and he stabilized, and a couple days later.
Well, that day was.
That's right. It was
Ken's
our youngest son's birthday,
his 13th
who
birthday.
very much blamed himself for what was happening, which was hard. And I was just praying, not today. Not today.
And 2 days later was her birthday, and they let her know my heart stopped.
And that was probably the 9th was the first of 4 or 5 times they called me in and told me to say goodbye.
So I know you said you go from there then, from them saying you're not going to make it, to every time you would come, he would get better.
That's right.
And there's something about that. You even gave them a tip that you had found on the internet. You became a research analyst, didn't you?
They say don't Google things, and you probably shouldn't, but I was all over that internet looking for options.
So you were giving them some options, and they tried them, and each time what you told them worked, a little bit more. But again, like you said, Steve's heart stopped 2 days later. That was a hard call to get. Then you get a call that his kidneys are in failure. Then you get a call that his body's in sepsis. And then October 5th was really, we've got a picture. It's the call where you said, we are at the point of no return, and they sent you this picture. And what were the words that came with the picture?
I mean, you can see he's on every medication possible. And they said, there's nothing left, and there's nothing else we can do. And Steve had stopped responding to any kind of stimuli, pain, coughing, gagging, eye movements. So they did a test, and they officially deemed him brain dead.
And that's what they told you over the phone, isn't it?
Yes. I went crazy after that phone call. I mean, it was temporary insanity. But I spent that night in prayer all night, and got on Google and found a few studies that had linked prolonged unconsciousness with COVID, with the medicine that he was on, and some other medication that they could give him to try to wake him up.
Well, the day after that, my niece actually arranged a prayer vigil
With Tom.
and that's when 600 people came out.
Right.
So you went into the neurologist then?
Yes, so the next day after that call saying he was brain dead, I went to the neurologist, and I had my studies. I was gonna show her, and she was gonna listen. And I had my copy, gave her her copy, and she just slid it back across the table. And she said, Mrs. Luther, your husband is brain dead. You need to decide if he would want to live his life this way. And in a moment of complete faith, I just said, you don't know my husband, and you don't know my God, but you should be ready to see a miracle out of room 377.
And that miracle is sitting here with us today. You weren't given the permission to do anything, and that's when the call that you were talking about, Steve, came here, and you said, Tom, I am organizing a prayer vigil. I want anybody who can come out and pray. And so you got your friends, your family, your church family. 600 of us showed up in the parking garage that day. Sumner Regional comes down and says, y'all got to move. And we're like, you can't move Jesus. You can't move Jesus. And you had us stretching out our arms across the parking garage. Ethan was singing Waymaker, and it just
So beautiful.
echoed through
Yes,
that. I don't know if you
amazing.
remember, but it was just a beautiful time of in the midst of all this sorrow. It was a moment of unity, like you said, that where we'd come together, and you told them, you said, don't you do anything. You told me on the 9th, you actually convinced them to stop the drug that you had done some research on. And they said, we're going to stop, but they said, this is the end. And they let you in to see him as they stopped the drug. Tell us what happened from there.
Well, they said, we shouldn't turn it off. I'm like, turn it off. They're like, we shouldn't turn it off. This is his happy place. When we turn it down, he gets agitated, and, I said, this isn't his happy place. His happy place is at home, and if we're going to make some progress, we got to take some risks, so turn it off. And we did, and within about 30 minutes, he woke up. And he was moving his feet on command, although very delayed, but it was on command. And I know there's hospital etiquette, but I screamed and I was running down the hallway, nurse, come and see. It was just such a wonderful moment.
Oh, You know, we could really go on another hour with this story. I told him, I said, it is really a made-for-TV movie. It really is. And I don't know who's out there that could hear that. I think it would be it's a wonderful story of hope and what God can do. And there's so much more, but let's summarize it. We got a few pictures we wanted to put up. One is one of those times they invited you in to say goodbye. You can...
Yeah, his hand was so swollen. They were pulling off 4 liters of fluid from his body every day. And we really have like the same size hands, you can see. So he was very swollen.
You know, one of the things I like that you told me, you said they told you to leave that one day and you said no. And you sat there for 26 hours with them telling you to leave.
He said, you've been here so long, you need to go home. I said, I'm not going home. You can drag me out. I'm not going home unless I have a promise I can come back the next day and the next day. And the next day, even if it's only for 30 minutes, it's very clear that he gets better while I'm here.
And so they did. And we're going to fast forward. Steve, it would be almost 4 months before you would get out of that bed. We got a picture of you the first time you stood up in 4 months. 2 ladies holding you. What was that moment like?
It was hard. I mean, I was very weak. I lost 65 pounds throughout this process. I had no muscle left. I couldn't even roll myself onto my side in bed. It took both of them to pick me up, and I was only up long enough to snap that picture, and then I was right back down.
When I got the pictures from you, and it was first time this, first time that, it reminded me of when we were parents, our kids were young. It was their first steps, their first drink. You got a picture of the first drink.
Yep.
Up there, learning to drink again.
And Steve does not like water at all. But when he was finished, he said, that was good.
And then you got first haircut.
Yep.
Look at here, first haircut. Back, returning a little bit to normal. Then we got a first date picture out there, kind of rolling out on the sidewalks. Steve, what were you thinking first time being out there?
I was a little scared, honestly. I was still not feeling great, and
in a lot of pain.
Yeah, I was in a lot of pain, and I wasn't sure I wanted to go out there. I said this is in the second service, and she was going to hit me if I did it again, but I did take the opportunity to grab her butt for the first time in months, and that was way better than the sunshine.
I'm so sorry, y'all. Sorry.
That was not in our script, but it was really funny when you brought it up. We have the first Christmas. After all of that, y'all were in the hospital. You got to celebrate Christmas with your boys there.
And I carried that blow-up Christmas tree all the way through the hospital.
But, kind of, we'll land back with pulling us back to 21 days of prayer and fasting. You said you were fasting, didn't really grow up religious,
right.
But you were fasting without knowing there was even a biblical term for that. And that it was during that time of going without something, in your case it was food, and crying out to God, that you heard God like you had never heard him before. Walk me through that.
That's right. So I didn't grow up in church, but started going when I was about 13 and was a believer. And when Steve and I first got together, he told me about a couple of times where very distinctly the Lord had spoken to him. And I remember thinking and telling Steve, I want God to talk to me like that. God's never spoken to me that way. I'm here. I'm ready. Talk to me. And I never had that moment until this happened. I wasn't intentionally fasting, but I sure wasn't eating. And I spent all my time in prayer, and it was in that time that I just had this spiritual awakening, and I started hearing from God. God came to me and spoke to me in so many ways to let me know that everything was going to be okay no matter what happened. And of course, I told him what I wanted, but it was a moment of complete and total surrender that changed my life.
You said, we got a little bit more time at this service, so I'll take a liberty here.
Okay.
I think they're with us for the duration.
Y'all with us?
You said you became a different lady.
Oh, yes.
About this boldness. Tell me.
I mean, I'm a pretty bold person. But when it came to certain topics, I wasn't, we weren't extremely vocal, especially about religion. But I don't know how deep you want me to go here, but there were a few moments that God spoke to me and told me in the hospital to talk to others about what we were going through and about what they were going through. And I realized it doesn't take much to pray and to let someone know that you love them. So now, whenever I see someone, if I think they need to be prayed for or prayed with, I just get right out there and do it. I tell them I love them, I hug them, and we're not huggers typically, but I just hug them and I love on them and I say, I'm gonna pray for you. So it changed my life.
There was a lady in the hospital, they kind of crossed paths going to the bathroom, and she was visibly upset. She was going through a similar situation with her daughter.
And I'm sitting there in the bathroom going, oh God, I know what you're doing. You're putting it on my heart to talk to her and to pray for her, and I'm so nervous and I don't know what you want me to say. So I just walked out and said, is there someone that I can be praying for? She said, my daughter. I said, what's her name? And she said, Ashley. And I said, that's my name. Tell me your story. And we talked and hugged and cried, and she left there with a sense of hope. And that moment helped me realize how important it is to pray for others and with others.
Well, could you just join me in saying thank you so much for your story? I looked at Steve when we were going through all of this, and one of the things that came to my mind was that you're here because of God. I mean, God is all over this story. But you had a Moses, you had a Joshua, you had a lady who was not giving up. And maybe that's what the 21 days of prayer and fasting is that sometimes when things seem to be at their worst, you don't give up on God. We're going to talk in a few weeks about the persistent widow. It finally said, well, the guy opened the door because she quit, but she wouldn't quit asking. And I just want to thank you for giving us a real life example of what it means to go before the throne of God and to sacrifice so much, pouring out your heart and just leading us in this effort. And Steve, wow, what an incredible journey you have been on. Maybe one day, even our next men's event, we'll talk about some lessons and messages that God has spoken through you as well. But for today, thank you. Thank you for being here for all three services.
Thank you for allowing us to share.
I love you both. The band is going to be making their way out. If you've got time, I hope you'll stay with us through the next song. You can be seated for just a second. I don't know where you are in your life, and I don't know what the next 21 days holds, but I know who holds the next 21 days. And there's just something in me that says that when we cry out, that God hears and that He answers. I love the verse that Lisa used, that when we humbly go before Him and we're willing to give up something that means something to us, whatever that is, and use that time to vote to call out to Him and to have a confidence in Him, that He shows up and He says, here I am. I hope over the next 21 days you hear that. And just as a thank you, it was a surprise at first service, but we wanted to close with the song Believe For It that was looping right before they put Steve on event, that he believed for it. And I want you to make it your song today, that when you think God is beyond doing something unworking, remember, He moves the immovable, He shakes the unshakable. And our request is over the next 21 days that you not only believe for it, but that you see it. Stand and sing this last song with us.